think you look great, Jude.
Thanks, buddy.
James here who'll be doing our research if we need it.
Nice to meet you. I'll be looking stuff up.
Yeah. Eli couldn't get here today, so.
Oh, who's on the laptop?
James.
Oh, hi, James.
Eli's doing a collage.
He did extensive research into laser technology.
It's like Googling last night to see what he can come up with for today.
Yes. When I told him we were going to be, doing what we're doing today. But anyway, and we have Nate. Nate, give a little introduction.
Morning.
We see Jude. He's come out of World War II time machine, but what?
Yeah. So I'm Nate. So I'm I know Jude from I'd say way back, but maybe it's not way back, from a while. Yeah, I'm kind of a physics, engineering, technology geek. I've played with lasers a lot. Done some things with the military industrial complex, which I say pejoratively, but hey, they're just trying to keep the world safe. That's
well, I understand completely.
Yeah,
there's a lot of good things that come out of the military industrial complex. It gets a bum rap sometimes.
Yeah.
But what's the most interesting thing about it? Do you know that the Pentagon has never passed an audit in 65 years?
That is not shocking.
Yeah. You think that's done by purpose? Do you think that's done on purpose?
I doubt it. I think they might just be a little too disorganized. Well, I don't know who's auditing them.
That's a good question. They're probably auditing themselves. That's probably why they, who knows? Well, no, there's a process inside the Treasury there's something we do on the auditing process inside government. So everyone gets audited every year.
Yeah. The GAO, maybe it's the GAO.
But the size of the Pentagon and its budget must be just ridiculously. I wonder what the size of the Pentagon budget is. That'd be an interesting.
Oh yeah.
James is on that. But
it's the biggest discretionary part of the budget. But the thing that bothers me. So have you seen these? Have you seen the bumper stickers? That's like the pie chart, and all it is a pie chart. It's like an inside joke. You have to know what it means. It's like a pie chart that has like half of the pie is like one thing, and then, or maybe a little more, and then there's all these little things. And the point of it is that like the big half is what we spend on defense, and then all these tiny little things that are important, more important than killing people, like education and whatever, is these tiny little slices over here. And it's like, yeah, but wait a minute, don't forget about the non-discretionary part, the Social Security and the Medicare and the Medicaid, because that's like two other pies over here on the side that you're not pictured. But anyway.
Right. What is the budget of the?
It's going to be about $75.4 billion.
Oh God, I thought it'd be more. I thought we'd be in the trillions by now with the.
What was it? 7 what?
That's a 2021. Yeah. So maybe by now it's higher.
Okay, so over 700 billion.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
And a lot of that is, what that is. A lot of it, you've got all those black ops things, and there's a lot of.
You remember when Rumsfeld? It was like September 10th or something, right before 9/11, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we're missing a couple $1 billion." You remember that? It was like a few days before 9/11.
The day before, and it was the headline, and then it wasn't.
And right, it was just gone into the nether regions of wherever.
I mean, if you get 700 billion to keep track of and you're missing a couple billion, I mean, it sounds like a big number, but percentage wise, I mean, if your household budget is like 100,000, right? And it's like, hey, what that last 2,000, Jude, in your budget, like, where did that go? I don't know. Who knows? But right. but the total U.S. budget is 6.3 trillion right now, so it's a little more than 10%. Defense.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Yeah. Well, we have dumped a bunch of money into Ukraine, but one of the things we originally were going to do this last week, but so many things have changed, and the thing that really we should talk about is the whole Maui thing. Have you heard? I mean, it is. So we have a natural disaster in Florida around DeSantis. It wasn't as bad as I thought, but DeSantis has been on twice a day talking about it. Everybody know what's going on. Nothing Maui. We don't know anything. So that vacuum allows a huge amount of conspiracy theorists to jump in and kind of give their opinion about it. But I don't know where's everybody on that? Nate, I'll go with you first because there's been rumors, right? There's been rumors that it was a, they called it a mass death weapon. It was, done by lasers. There's a lot of things that don't make a lot of sense with it. I have a
Did
question.
the Jews get blamed for this one too, or no? And I can say this because I'm Jewish.
Here we go. They'll get blamed.
Okay, start the drinking game of how many times. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I think we'll probably have to blame them. Dude, I'm sorry, but you guys kind of take the hit.
I did see some poorly photoshopped images of people claiming that they were light beams or laser beams. I mean, it's hard now because you can't tell, people upload these images and who knows where they came from.
Yeah, so here's all I know. So I'll start with like what I think is. I tend to start with the simplest explanation first, which is this is just a tragedy, and bad things happen, and so that's kind of my going in position. Now,
Occam's razor, baby.
Yeah, like the simplest explanation might be the right one. Now, there was also some. So I haven't heard or seen anything specific about lasers being the start of this one, but there was a video on YouTube circulating not that long ago where people in Hawaii were saying that they were seeing like green lasers coming down from the sky.
That's right.
So I can only guess that these two things might be related. That like that happened, and then maybe they started a fire with it.
This was before the actual fires?
Yeah.
Months ago, a couple of months ago.
Right. So I guess one thing when I heard about that, I thought, is that our thing? Because we actually have, and this is part of the stuff that I can talk publicly about. The U.S. has launched some green lasers into space that shoot down at the Earth to make like measurements. It's called have you guys heard about this?
Yeah, because the Chinese have it too, right?
The Chinese have it too, right? Yeah, I assume so. So ours is called ICESat, ICESAT. So it's like this green laser in there. It's called ICESat because they're like measuring, they're like measuring the ice caps and things. So that there's this low Earth orbit satellite floating around, spinning around the Earth, and it's basically a LiDAR. So they're doing like ground mapping. Shooting this green laser beam down at the Earth and measuring what comes back, and then you can create like a 3D topology of like, okay, this ice cap is this big above the surface of the water or whatever. So that's a real thing, right? It's been in orbit for, gosh, I want to say it's been like 7 or 8 years at this point. So when I heard about the green thing on Hawaii, like I thought it was that, but then it sounds like it wasn't that. But so sure, the Chinese have probably done something similar. So I can't help but think that could be what makes people think like, I just saw on YouTube this green laser coming down and like hitting Hawaii and now it's on fire. From a physics perspective, I would say it's actually pretty friggin' hard to make a laser big enough to start a fire. Because that requires, you certainly can start a fire with a laser, but you need a really, really tightly focused beam. And that's hard when you're coming from 400 kilometers away. So the idea that some space laser started this fire is, it sounds a little suspicious to me from a pure physics perspective. But
doesn't that mapping laser come down in kind of a grid pattern? It's not just like a singular beam. It looks more like a matrix of.
I think it does a scan. I think it flies over and does like a raster scan, like a top.
Yeah, because I've seen photographs of that, and it looks different than, say, like one singular beam coming down.
Does it do topography? Is that what?
Yeah.
So it does a topography measurement, and so that'd be a little bit different. But so if that comes down and measures the topography, does it, once it hits the surface, does it spread out, or can that happen with a laser beam?
So it's going to have like some, think of it like an ice cream, like an upside down ice cream cone like this, right? So you're up here at this laser and it's coming out of a little aperture that's, I don't know how big it is. You could probably look it up. It's probably like, I don't know, like yay big, like a decent sized lens. And then it just comes down in a cone. So by the time it hits the surface of the earth, it's got to be like, I could do this math on the side, but I don't like doing math in public, but it's big. It's going to be a large beam by the time it hits the ground. And when I say large, I mean, it's probably like a few meters, which if you're trying to map out topography, like that's fine. It's like, am I on the top of a mountain or am I on the beach or am I, so few meters resolution is great for topography. But if you were trying to start a fire, I mean, it's like a magnifying glass, right? I take this much of the sun and I focus it down to a spot that's a millimeter, then you've concentrated the power enough to make it hot enough to start a fire, right? But if you've got this energy spread across several meters, it's not going to start a fire. And by the way, you'd never get approval to do this out in the open if you were capable of like shooting a beam down that could start a fire, because it would blind people. No way would it be eye safe. Never mind, just safe.
Right. What's the significance of the colors? So you've got blue, green, red, you got all these different colored lasers. What is the significance of those? So they all have certain superpowers, for lack of a better word. Yeah,
to a degree. I mean, a lot of times it comes down to just the coincidental specifics of like what's an easy way to make a laser. So you see a lot of green lasers because one of the best laser materials in the world is neodymium YAG, or you can put neodymium in other things. Neodymium's on the periodic table. It's in, I don't know, in the 70s or high 60s or something like that. And that wants to emit at 1064 nanometers, which you can't see. That's in the infrared, but there's a very convenient way to cut the wavelength in half or double the frequency, and that'll take you from 1064 to 532 nanometers, which is bright green. So you see a lot of green. I've got a green laser pointer. I don't know. It's probably in my office at work, but right, you can buy them like super cheap. It's actually a pretty complicated laser. It's a near IR laser diode that's pumping like the solid state laser crystal and then going through this frequency doubler. It's making it green. It's actually pretty complicated. It's amazing you can buy this for $20, but that just shows like that this is pretty mature, solid technology, which means it's very convenient to make a bright green laser. So that's kind of why they picked it. I mean, it all kind of gets through the atmosphere pretty well, like the part of the spectrum that our eyes can see. So you could use blue, red, or green or whatever. It's just green. Yeah. Green's a super easy laser to make. So
you could build a laser that the human eye can't see?
Oh yeah. In fact, it's easier to build a laser that the human eye can't see, right? Like if you don't do that doubling step, you can get twice as much power out, because that doubling process, at best case, can only be 50% efficient.
They could send something into.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I'm sure that's already in the works.
it would be, yeah. I'm sure it is. Yeah, if all-out war broke out and people disregarded things like the Geneva Convention, it would be a very scary place, because we could quickly all get blinded by lasers.
Does the laser technology fall under the Geneva?
Yes, it does.
They've actually.
Yep. Oh yeah. And of course you got to worry about people that don't give a damn about the rules, but we run into that all the time at work, where we might have a whiz bang technology that would work really well, but if it's like, well, if it's not eye safe, it's actually okay to blind someone just before you kill them. That's okay. But you can't just blind them.
Oh my God.
That's not okay.
Or if it's temporary blindness, that's okay, right? And it comes back.
Yeah, it's a fuzzy.
Then you die a few days later.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Oh my God. So how about this? Funny. I don't know what you can tell us, but can you tell us basically, so when lasers get energy where they can actually do damage, how does that work? I mean, what's it, Pat? What fuels? We know what fuels nuclear power. We know what fuels energy in general. What fuels a laser? What makes it?
I mean, it's electricity. But I mean, maybe I might not be fully understanding your question, but the big death ray lasers, I mean, it's just you're just turning electrical power into
That's what it
power.
is. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, and you know, rate efficiency becomes the whole name of the game. If you want to have a 10 kilowatt death ray laser, best case, you know, it might be 20% efficient. So you need 50 kilowatts of power coming in, which is a big number, but it's not like hard if you're on like a boat with a nuclear power plant, or, you know, I mean.
So electricity passes.
Yeah. Good.
So electricity passes through a device, and when it comes out the other end, whatever happens in between creates the strength of the laser, or what you want that laser to do, whether it's measurement, topography, you know, measuring. They use them all the time, right? Don't they, in landscaping, or not landscaping, but land surveying and things.
Sure. Like that. Yep. Yeah, they use them for, you buy a laser level for your yard, to, you know, level out, you know. Yeah, they use them for all kinds of things.
But that's that technology. But when you want to intensify,
right. Yeah,
from, we're going to make a measurement to, we're going to blind you and then cut your head off. How do you get to that?
Oh, yeah, right. So I mean, it's the same physical process. It's just a lot more of it, right? And you end up getting into interesting ways that you know, to combine it and, you know, to try to make the beam really concentrate. It becomes really a heat management problem, because the process is the same, right? You're pumping in electricity, and whatever the laser mechanism is, there's a bunch of different ones, but you're fundamentally like you're exciting the atoms and kicking electrons up to a higher energy state, and then they emit light. But it's not 100% efficient, so you're also generating heat in the process. So the big challenge of creating some big huge laser like this is you got to get the waste heat out, or the thing will just melt. Right. So, and then you've just created a death ray for yourself, which that's not the goal.
So when you look at, let's just go back to Maui. I don't know what people have seen, but I've seen a few car fires in my life. Just recently, last year, I helped a guy. His car started on fire on 787. It was like, I got to tell you something. The firemen got right out, and they had like a shield, but they got right up against the car. I kept thinking there's going to be an explosion, but they say a lot of what's in cars today is anti-fire. So you don't have the intensity that you used to with cars, because they just don't have the energy. You know, it might burn, but it's not going to burn at a level where we've seen the wheels are melting, the metal in the car, there's rivers of it running. You don't see that too often with a fire. The whole thing, just to kind of put it out there, the whole Maui fire is, I don't know. We haven't got anyone telling us what's going on. Now they're putting a black wall around the whole circumference of the fire area. And it just seems like it's being handled in such a bizarre way. And fires, usually you don't have the casualties that we had with this. You know, it had 90-mile-an-hour winds. Well, California's been dealing with this shit for a long time. They don't have those kinds of casualties, but we had these casualties in Maui. It's just kind of interesting. And the fact that you do have these lights, we're leaving it wide open for conspiracy theorists who are saying, oh, it was an alien invasion. Now, one of the big conversations occurring out there right at the moment was, this is payback for the Ukraine. So China and Russia are creating havoc with what happened in Maui. Then we had a hurricane and an earthquake in California. Okay. You know,
earthquakes are hard to cause, though, right?
I don't know. I mean, are they? I mean, now, and it all goes back to laser technology, because people said, oh yeah, we can affect the weather. You know, with that, we can affect the weather with laser technology. Actually, seismic activity, I don't know whether any of that's possible.
Yeah, I think you need like an explosive of some kind for that.
The magnitude one earthquake apparently is like 700,000 joules. So,
well, that's not that big.
That's not that.
But each
magnitude 1 is like nothing. I mean, that's like you had too much chili last night.
2.5 is 141 million.
But what happens with an earthquake, every exponential increase on the right side of the decimal is 10 times bigger than the other one. That's what's so weird about earthquakes.
Right.
When you got 2.5, that's pretty significant. And you go 2.6, it's 10 times bigger than the last measurement. So it's kind of an odd thing, but there's a lot of natural disasters occurring in the world all at the same time. And there's a lot of things about Maui that just don't add up for people. So like I said, we don't have a mayor or a governor who's stepping in every day saying, okay, this happened, that happened. And there is a lot of unanswered questions. Like there's 2,000 kids missing. And if you know what happened, they sent these kids home. There were 16 school buses. 14 of the school buses are gone. No one knows where they are. There are 4 left and they're all intact. And then there are a couple of short run buses, the shorter buses. Those are there and all intact. So it's just weird. It's a weird thing. Where are the kids? And so people who are in the world of conspiracies sit there and go, wait a minute, we're missing a third of the kids at the border. So what they call the brown kids, we're missing a third of them. 25% of the kids in the Ukraine have been displaced and are missing. Parents can't find their kids. So all of a sudden, every time one of these things occurs, it seems like there's no children. Where did they go? Now, what I did hear this morning was they found 500 either dead or accounted for.
In
But
Maui?
there's 1,500 missing children. Yeah.
Oh my God. Hopefully
Yeah.
there's not some new Epstein Island somewhere.
Oh, gosh.
Pinocchio, remember
Yes,
the
terrible.
Pinocchio video? I mean, you got that whole thing going on. So I don't know. I mean, it's really, it just leaves everything wide open for this huge discussion, which maybe it was just a catastrophe of sorts. And, you know, they didn't get water. They shut the water off. They weren't letting anybody leaving. They're not letting anybody go in. The only information anybody's getting, it's not covered in the news. Like I watched the news today, it was covered very briefly, but not addressing everything. They confronted the mayor on the loss of children and he had no comment and he couldn't wait to get out. There was one video on that this morning and I just don't know.
Well, was there talk about like the utility company having some culpability because like they thought it had started with one of the electric utilities somehow? I mean, if they were negligent in any way in their whatever work they were doing to keep the grid up, I mean, obviously that'd be pretty embarrassing if it was just kind of negligence or, you know, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I don't have any inside information, but I certainly, if I was running that utility and it started with, you know, a transformer somewhere, I wouldn't want that on the news.
No, I mean,
somebody's got to find out, right? I mean, yeah.
But they also said that there was a lot of brush underneath the wires, so that whole, you know, force management that we not practice, like California does not practice that. You know, creates bigger problems, and if it's just a function of managing that. But
are there U.S. Boots on the ground, like National Guard or anything, or not really?
Just FEMA, as far as we know, they don't have any of that. There's just nothing coming out of it. There's no.
Yeah, it's weird. It's like those Canadian forest fires. There wasn't really a lot of press on that. I had to dig pretty deep to even find photographs of like burning forest. You know, like it was like buried. Like the U.S. press didn't really pick up on it, other than the city. You know, pictures of the city smoggy.
Well, we had a dystopian landscape in New York for a week. You really couldn't go out. It bothered the shit out of me. I know that it was.
Here in Iowa too, the air quality was terrible.
Yeah, it smelled like a barbecue. You know, like we were going to a barbecue joint. You know how barbecue restaurants smell? That's what it smelled like. Here, and
it was a nice smell. Was it really as good as barbecue? Did it make you hungry?
You can't live with it though for 5 days, 20.
Oh yeah, that's true. I guess even if it smelled good, it was.
I had a question back on lasers. I was wondering, like, in your opinion, Nate, where does the U.S. stand globally as far as technology? Where are, like, say, our adversaries, or China or Russia? Where are they?
Can you answer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I can speculate. Like I said, I don't have all the details of that, but like I will say, I think we're in pretty good shape. But China is very capable. I mean, they publish a lot of research, and who knows what they do above and beyond what they say out in the open.
And that's just published, right?
Right.
But isn't it like an arms race? Would you say like it was with nuclear? Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, and maybe not to the same degree, but I mean, China is one of the key sources of the rare earth metals that like neodymium, which I mentioned, which can be used for lasers. It's also important in all the modern electric vehicles and batteries and in the magnets that run all the motors. So, and they've kind of clamped down on, hey, we're not going to be exporting that stuff because they want it for themselves. They want to.
Where is that sourced, generally?
I mean, I've just heard China. I don't know like what particular part of China, but they're one of the one of the main sources.
They mine out of Afghanistan, which would
they
have moved in now. Nobody's reporting that, but China's moved in and has made a deal with the Taliban on a lot of the mines that are in Afghanistan for these metals. I mean, the Afghani landscapes like Mars. That's why it was such a difficult place from Alexander the Great to the great armies of the U.S. We really had our problems. If you remember, Osama bin Laden was going from cave to cave during that whole manhunt for him, and he escaped into Pakistan. But they say that landscape is just brutal. Type of military with modern equipment. You got to do that thing on horseback, and you can't even do it on equipment, gas-powered engines or.
Yeah, Gideon was there. We have to talk to him at some point.
Yeah, we definitely do. But one other thing, the police chief of Lahaina, which was where this really all occurred in Maui, Pelletier, he is the police chief now. Do you know what his background is? Just to add to the whole thing, pile on. Pelletier was the man in charge of in Vegas. He was a police chief there in Vegas during that shooting, where the guy climbed up, killed 58 people, injured 500 people. That massive shooting where he was shooting down on that concert. I don't remember what concert it was, so I don't want to say, but it was a country and western concert.
Yeah.
That's weird.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Now he said the mayor? Is he the mayor?
No, he's the police chief.
Police chief. Yeah.
Yeah, he's the police chief for Lahaina, where this all, where it really took place. Maui's a big island. It'd be like,
right. Not, yeah.
New York, Albany, Maui, Lahaina is where this all took place. And the other thing that's a little weird about it was that everything with all the billionaires' homes were spared. There's quite a few of them there. I guess Oprah has a place there. But all of the buildings.
It's Oprah's fault. I know it. Sorry.
What's that?
Oprah.
I said it was Oprah's fault. I'm apologizing, but it was probably Oprah's fault. Yeah.
When you get into Oprah, that's a whole other thing.
I know people. I didn't realize she was like so demonized. The other day, I just like stumbled onto it, and I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't know Oprah was evil."
Oh yeah, she,
I mean, in certain circles, she's the Antichrist.
Yeah, Jay-Z and Beyonce, the whole, then we start getting into the Illuminati, which is a whole other thing.
We have to have Nate on for that too. Yeah,
her whole Luciferian attachment and the Illuminati. I mean, but the point is, if she's there, I guess Gates has tried. There's been quite a few people in that particular area trying to buy up that real estate, which the towns were like, no, we want to maintain. It was like a charming little, I wouldn't say fishing village, but it was like this place that was frequently visited by tourists just because it was a charming little place in Maui. It had all makings of this little village. But yeah,
that was before that they're this buying the billionaires buying real estate, or was this wasn't an after that thing, right?
No, this is prior. This has
Yeah.
been highly desired real estate because
Sure. Yeah. I mean, hey, I had a few billion. I mean, it seems like a really nice place.
Yeah. No, it is. So I guess the big question is, and I don't know that we'll ever know. They're so good at keeping. Well, they're kind of good at it. I don't know today. You've got all these podcasters that have just gone in, and there's video. There's it's like overwhelming. But when you see the landscape of what happened, it just doesn't look like there. And there's been folks on. There's been firefighters who were there who were like, "This is not a normal fire. We've not seen this before." And there was folks who have experience outside with California fires and things that are just saying this is not a normal. This is not how these things occur, and how quickly it happened. Usually, we don't have those kind of. They don't even know what the casualty count is at this point either. It's been at 300 for a long time, but we really don't have that casualty count at this point.
Yeah. No. I mean, it's only been a couple of weeks. Yeah, but it's weird. I was looking at this map of the damage, and it's like there's two separate areas. It's like there's this north part of the island, and then there's a gap where it doesn't look like there was as much damage, and then to the south is where most of the damage occurred. So it's like if it started in one place, like if it was a utility issue or something, then wouldn't it be contiguous? I don't know. I guess I don't know how it spread, but it looks strange.
I don't think anybody knows. That's the problem, and we're because of that vacuum. Everybody's making a lot of assumptions. So the big thing has been this power energy death ray. Who knows? But it's definitely a weird circumstance, and everything just keeps piling up at this point. There is so much out there at this point that you really can't believe it. But it's it's definitely a mystery at this point. But one of the other mysteries just getting back to the military industrial complex for a minute, Lawrence Preston Geis. Are you guys familiar with him? I think I had sent you some info on this. Anyway, Lawrence Preston Geis was Jeff Bezos' grandfather. And he is the founder of ARPA, which became DARPA. Okay, DARPA, which is the Defense Procurement Agency inside the U.S. government, which I have some lovely experience with. But what people don't realize, Bezos' grandfather did that. And when you are building technologies in the public domain as a private company, and they think you have something, who comes to visit you?
DARPA?
Or agents for DARPA, or BlackRock, or Vanguard. People don't realize this. So every single company. So we've been talking about the creating a political weapon out of the FBI and all of these acronym companies, the intelligence agencies. What we don't talk about is companies, and they go underneath the wire. And just to I guess we could start with, the origin of this discussion is best discussed with what's going on with Donald Trump. Okay, people hate him, they love him, they want to kill him. I think we're probably down to that at this point. When you think about the fact that he's been indicted 4 times now, arrested and indicted.
I grew up to 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
So impeached twice and indicted 4 times for those keeping score. Total number of charges, I don't even know.
Yeah. In every instance, his popularity's grown.
Right.
So I guess the question is, what do you think's next? I mean, I think they have to assassinate him.
That's what Tucker Carlson was saying last night. He was like, they're going to kill him. Yeah, he apparently interviewed him. I didn't watch the interview. But
I didn't see the interview. I'm hoping we're going to talk a little bit about the debate. But anyway, it's I guess the term polarizing figure might be, perhaps the understatement of the decade. We thought Hillary was a polarizing figure. I think that is one additional area where Donald Trump has defeated Hillary in the most polarizing figure category.
Did we ever figure out if you can run for the presidency like as a convicted felon? Did we look that up on the last one? Okay.
My issue is, isn't he term limited? I thought you could only get elected twice, and what I've been hearing for the last 3.5 years is, shit. I thought he's won 2 elections at this point, so I don't know. I'm just.
Oh my Lord! Well, if we want to talk about election interference, what everybody always focuses on, because that's what the media is good at, is distracting us. Everybody's focusing on the machines. The machines. So first of all, I had a tech company, and a couple of my tech guys were, I guess, on the cusp of pretty talented hackers. And they said the easiest thing in the world to hack is a voting machine. There's no firewall usually. It's just out there. So it's not like I could go on and on about the voting system in this country. When you think about the CIA, what's their job? There's 2 jobs they have. Make sure elections have outcomes that are beneficial to the United States of America, foreign, that's what they say. And 2, and they'll admit that. That's not something they won't admit. And then the second thing is, start as many wars as you can so we can keep the machine rolling. I hate to say that, but that's really what their job is. And
didn't Vivek Ramaswamy say something about going back to the paper ballots or something? Like he had an idea about voting. I can't remember. It was something kind of funny though.
Well, his voting and a lot of people's voting is based upon France. Do you know what France does?
No, I do.
You fill in the circle, and it's all hand counted.
I think that's what he was trying to get back to. Like,
that seems like not a crazy idea. I don't know. I guess the one thing with the hacking, I sort of start with the assumption that like the bad actors are like kind of evenly distributed across the political spectrum and geography and gender and race and like whatever. Like there's good people and there's bad people and they're kind of sprinkled everywhere. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm skeptical that our election system is that bad, but yeah, it feels like it could certainly be simplified and improved upon, and
You're skeptical of that it's not predetermined.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, so the CIA interferes in foreign elections. Yes, they do. That's
question.
That's pretty well documented.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. I guess I just wouldn't assume that it follows that they go ahead and interfere in our own, because, I mean, their job, their charter is kind of messing with the rest of the world for the most part. I mean, could they spy on us? Well, sure. I think the NSA spied on us more than the CIA, but I mean, who knows what we don't know. But
yeah, well, the one thing I do know a little bit about that. So originally the CIA was the procurement component of the government, which was out there. So if you had a technology, you'd always end up talking to the CIA. Okay, you weren't really sure they're government officials, and so they would start a recruitment process that would put you in the DARPA line. So just ICQ-10, I think that's the name of it, is so what happened over time, because DARPA was taking these technologies. So when you look at Facebook, Google, Microsoft, all of these major tech companies, they are all origins of DARPA. Okay, so when the government comes in and they say, "Oh, you've got a technology we're interested in," and I can mention a few things about that. You end up interfacing with DARPA, and then they basically tell you, "Listen, we can take your company to that level. You step aside, just let us do this. You'll become a billionaire. Just shut up about it." And it was a way to circumvent the First Amendment in the Constitution, because they have all this access to information. So they were involved in that. So what ended up happening in the last 10 years, CIA created a venture capital arm, which is a not-for-profit. So it's got to be like a 501c4 versus a 501c3, because that's like a trade organization vehicle for tax purposes anyway. For the government, it's the government, it's taxpayer money invested in these corporations. So they create this, and now they're right in that lane of traffic that they've always been in, but it's just blatantly more out there. And I think that I think when you think about who is involved in the tech world, they got ahead of it pretty. They actually were late to the game, and I'll explain. Because I have a lot of experience in this. And what happened was, just to kind of, when I was involved in the tech industry, we were creating blockchain technology. We were creating a peer-to-peer technology that came off of the architecture of the dark nets, okay? And which was a scary thing. That's where that's still where all the criminals are on the internet, or out there in the dark net. So what happened was, we were building this peer technology, and they did not like it. But we were ahead of the government at that point. They didn't understand it. They didn't understand government. They were taking some kid who knew how to use a Google or Yahoo email, and Google didn't exist at that time, and he'd become the IT guy for the record industry, for the government. Nobody had any idea what was going on. And we were approached by the government to take a look at our technology. And then they started to try and get a hold of it, and they were going to regulate it. And I could go on and on about that story. But when you look at AI today, same thing. But the government's ahead of it, right? So what's your thoughts on AI, Nate? I'd love to hear that.
Oh man, I mean, I guess I have a lot of thoughts on AI. I mean, do you want to narrow it down? I mean, like, is it an existential threat, or is it, like, is it for real? Or I guess one thing I think that's kind of funny about AI is that everybody is all of a sudden super excited about it, and it's like all of a sudden everybody woke up and started paying attention. And I equate it. It must be kind of fun. I'm not really an AI person. I'm more of a hardware laser optics person, but obviously in the defense world, we talk about AI, machine learning and stuff all the time. But it strikes me, when I was a kid, we were having some work done on the house, and the contractor one day, my dad made a comment like, "Hey, you made a lot of progress." And the contractor's like, "Yeah, I make progress every day. Today we put in the windows." And the day you put in the windows, everybody's like, "Wow, you made so much progress today." And it must feel to the people that have been working in AI for decades, like all of a sudden ChatGPT hits the streets, and it's like, "Whoa, AI just made a quantum leap forward." And it's like, well, we put in the windows. Now you can type into it and say, "Hey, write a poem about a crazy squirrel in the style of Edgar Allan Poe," and boom, there it is. And it's like, wow. All of a sudden, that's amazing. And it is amazing, and it is incredibly useful, and it is now vastly more accessible. Now that basically anybody that has a command of the English language can get meaningful output from artificial intelligence. That is a big deal. But in terms of progress, we've been making progress in this field, slow and steady progress for decades. And we will continue to. I think it's I also think it's a little comical now that they put in the windows, that now we've reinvigorated the, okay, it's an existential threat. We're only a few years away from, we stitch all these narrow intelligences together, and then they decide, they've got some nefarious purpose, or, they decide to harvest all the humans and, chop off our heads and, harvest the carbon and make paper clips, or, whatever. I think that part of it is a little silly, but interesting to talk about for sure. But
yeah, I'm not
I guess
we really don't have AI. We have some superbly written software that's has its own incredible qualities, and I think that it's just the implementation of really good software. Are we heading in that direction? No doubt about it. But what I have discovered, having again just some experience with the government and technology, they are trying to demonize AI. Now, I don't believe for 1 minute that we're going to have the Terminator situation on our hands. And if we do, we're 20 years away, that where AI is going to go, "Oh yeah, you know what? Humans suck. I'm just going to use the Pentagon and create a DEFCON 5 situation. Let's just see what the fuck happens." I don't know. I don't know about any of that ever occurring, but I see more benefits upside to AI than downside. The problem is the government's involved now. They feel because, okay, it's just like everything they do. Let's create a fear. Oh, AI is bad if we don't control it. Who should control it? Well, these two companies should control it, Google and Microsoft, who are all on the government dole. They're part of the Vanguard network. They're part of BlackRock. They're part of that whole thing. And then the reason politicians are so afraid of AI is because it would call them out. It could figure out, we're not too far away from that right at the moment where they're all full of shit. Oh, that, you might talk about Pinocchios. AI could be the greatest source of that, figuring out what is right or wrong. So the open source AI, I'm all for. I think that they should be doing the open source AI because one thing tech people can be pretty like they can be a little what would you say? They can be a little anarchical. But at the same time, they would prefer to make something that was in the middle, not to one side or the other. They'd like to create something. Open source people tend to want to create something that works honestly. And you get Microsoft involved and you get Google involved. That's government owned. It is government owned. And we'll go back to that a little bit. But government.
We should talk about that.
Huh?
We should talk about that. I'm not sure.
We're going to.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah.
We're going to. But just that whole AI thing. So build the fear into people and say, no, these are trusted custodians of technology. Let them do this. They know what they're doing. Let them do it. And then as we saw with Twitter, right? You got 20 people from the FBI working there. You've got all kinds of shit going on, and the government owns and controls it. I mean, no one is willing to admit that. No one wants to admit that this all happened. Elon Musk bought it. He revealed it. That went down the tube just like WikiLeaks. Nobody wanted to tell. It wasn't reported anywhere what was going on. So you look at Julian Assange and all of these guys that have brought this forward. It has gotten very little press. Edward Snowden got more than anybody. Where is Julian Assange? But you have all of these people who have just get crushed because the government owns the news media. That's Project Mockingbird. That's been that way since just after World War II. I mean, they ran the narrative on the JFK assassination. We could get into all that, but we won't. Let's spare everybody because it's been discussed ad nauseum. But but getting back to the government owning tech companies. Like I said, if you had a tech company or a biotech industry, technology, the government is there. They know what the fuck is going on out there. They have people out there that are scouring, looking for the next thing because they don't want to get behind that.
Oh yeah, I mean that is DARPA's publicly stated mission is to be out in front of technology development. Right? It started after Sputnik when we were like, holy cow, the Soviets figured out how to put a satellite up in space. Whoa, I wasn't expecting that. So yeah, absolutely. When technology is advancing forward, they want to be right there at the forefront. And yeah, I mean, there are times when it's not surprising that they would say, hey, you're doing some good stuff here and we got to get it behind the door. Right.
What were you going to say, James? You had some from a young person here.
This is from a young person who wasn't around at the time, but AI, it kind of seems like to me it's like the same as the internet. Right? So when it started, the internet, a lot of people didn't think it would take off, and some people thought it would like revolutionize everything. And that's kind of a similar situation with AI. And it's also like with the big companies that just started monopolizing the internet. So it's just kind of similar in my opinion.
Yeah, there's some similarities. And talking about the internet, you bring us back to DARPA. So, who released DARPA onto the world was Bezos's grandfather. He was the one who really sat at the middle of that, made the decision to create, which was a military, and communications by the military, and they decided to release it onto the world. I mean, I think that there's just a master plan we probably don't know about. I think they had a pretty clear idea to some degree what was going to happen, which what really surprised me in 1999 and 1995 through 2001 was they go ahead and release the internet, but there was really it was pretty primitive stuff. I mean, we had to deal with a lot of shit when we were programming across those protocols. the big thing that was so surprising to me was that it could break so easy. It broke a lot. The internet broke a lot.
Yeah.
It wasn't self-healing. It didn't have all the things it has today.
Sure.
And I think what really happened was the government realized they didn't have the capacity to address advancement.
Yeah. They're not good at scaling something like the internet to the whole country or the world in a way that it'll be a good user experience. They're too bureaucratic. They're
Right.
Yeah, any government run website is generally like the worst.
Oh,
Their user interface people, I don't know where they get them from.
I don't know if you guys will dabble a little here into some finance, but have you ever bought treasuries like from you can buy US treasuries, and the website, it's the most gimmicky sounding thing. It's treasurydirect.com. This is a government website. It looks like it was written, I don't know, 1993.
Yeah.
It's so like you feel like, am I just sending my money off to some kid in like Siberia or something? Am I being punked here? But back when we started having inflation ripping out of control, it's too late. This is not financial advice because you've missed the boat. But that you could buy I-bonds, these inflation protected bonds that, you know, if as long as you're good with being backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government, they were paying out like 9%, and it was risk free. And I'm like, hey, I'll take it. I'll do some of that. But you got to go onto this website. It's like, is this for real? And I kid you not, the way you entered your password. This is when they were, I guess, worried about the like the keyboard sniffing. Like you could put a little transmitter on his keyboard, so they didn't want you clicking keys on your keyboard. You put in your username, and then there's a keyboard that's displayed on the screen, and you got to move your mouse across the keyboard and click in your password. I'm like, holy cow! It takes me like 17 minutes to log in here. Finally, they got rid of that. But yeah, I mean, it just goes to illustrate that, you know, when the federal government does something, it's not going to necessarily be a good user experience. So yeah, I mean, the buggy internet kind of needed some private sector competition and, you know, innovation to make it what we have come to know and love today as the internets.
The government certainly has a lot of levers that they can pull. There's no question about that. But I mean, but that's a fact about, we'll go back to that, Nick, because you want to talk about it a little bit, but it's a fact that the government is involved in a lot of seeding. They definitely were involved in Amazon. They were definitely involved in, you know, you got State Street Corp, you got Vanguard, you got BlackRock. All of these companies are invested in all of these companies. And what's so interesting, just to go back to Trump, because I think this whole phenomenon with Trump is something that we're going to look back in history and go, you know, wow, how did this happen? Right before our eyes, we had a process that was being manipulated. Forget the fucking voting machines. How about the propaganda? How about not releasing that 16% of people said we would never have voted for the Bidens. If I say the Bidens, because they're all joined at the hip, wouldn't have voted for them if we'd known about the laptop. And now we know that Joe Biden had aliases. He had 3 or 4 aliases he was sending emails back and forth with to his son, so that he wasn't the vice president's email. And there's so much evidence, and no one's paying attention to it. The acronyms are not paying attention to it, and they're just kind of letting it slide. They just are going to issue subpoenas to Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. Well, I'm like, good. If he's out there gathering up, using his influence where he was sitting at that time with the Saudis and made billions, and it was illegal, we should have him front and center as well. But if we're going to do that, let's do it with everybody. We'd run out of people in Congress if we did that. But we should be looking at everyone and imposing the same standard on everyone. The greatest thing that's happened with Trump, not great, I'm just saying a really interesting thing that's happened is the Black community now considers him the real first Black president. because of his
Yeah, man.
and their view is he's being chased and it's all bullshit because they just don't like him. And that's what happens to us. Have you seen all these? Down in Harlem, they have pictures of his mugshot all over New York, all over LA, saying persecution and writing all this stuff around his
Pictures of Trump.
Yeah, his pictures. Yeah, all over the city. And so that's kind of backfired on them. He's like Godzilla, right? The more he gets electrocuted, the more powerful he gets. It's like this crazy phenomenon. And,
Nate, did you watch the debates?
I did, but so hold on. I gotta just ask for like a clarification here on the. So you mentioned like BlackRock and Vanguard and these guys that own these big tech companies. I'm sure that is true on paper, but the thing that makes it a little confusing is like those guys, particularly BlackRock and Vanguard, and then State Street is another huge one.
That's right.
They run these massive passive investment vehicles, exchange traded funds and things like SPY. I think is I'm going to forget who's who, but right, they all have one that tracks like the S&P 500 or NASDAQ or narrower funds, but like SPY and QQQ and these exchange traded funds comprise they're huge. They have become huge. So yeah, when I go buy or you go log on to Robinhood and you buy SPY, you're buying the entire S&P 500. And these mega tech companies, the top 7 or whatever, Google and Meta and Facebook and Apple and Amazon and Tesla or whatever. I don't know if I'm up to 7 yet, but they're so huge, right? That when you buy the NASDAQ, it's even more with the NASDAQ. But when you buy the S&P, either one, you're buying a big percentage of those funds is like the top 7, but it's passive, right? I mean, that means they do have voting rights
at that level,
but it's not obvious that they have an agenda. I mean, they're there to just run these massive funds and have billions and billions under management, and it's easy, right? Like it's not complicated. You just take the investments and you mirror the composition of the S&P 500. So it's all just volume, right? So they can charge uber low fees. It's like we'll charge you 0.01% or something, but 0.01% of. I just looked up SPY. It's got $432 billion of net assets, right? So you take a 0.1%, just under 0.1% on the expense ratio, and you got $500 million. That's not a bad business. Right. But it's not obvious to me that they have any kind of agenda to influence these big companies in a nefarious way. That's all.
Okay, well, I would say then let's think about this for a minute. Nate, you brought it all the way to front, but we were kind of what I was trying to talk about. So when you look at the fact that when you just look at the components of, we go back to Donald Trump, because I'm trying to figure out, and again, you're right, he's a polarizing figure, he's his own worst enemy, all that. But the thing that I'm just so surprised at is the concern of the political class, both Democrats and Republicans. Why is that? Is there something other than the fact that, like JFK, John F. Kennedy, Trump has said we should dismantle these intelligence agencies and start over? I mean, he's not the first president to say that. He may be the second or third, but they killed the one because they didn't like the concept of the Federal Reserve going away and the FBI. J. Edgar Hoover at the time, he was such a nice guy. And then Gillespie, I think, or Gottlieb was the guy running the CIA during, I believe it was him during which he was part of the MK Ultra thing and everything. I mean, they were just doing whatever the fuck they wanted back then. They still are, but I'm just saying, we had the Church Committee, which was 1977 or 1976. Find out when the Church Committee was founded when they went after the CIA and FBI. And it was shortly after the whole thing with JFK. They really thought there was something wrong, especially the Warren report, just a complete crap. That wasn't even a real thing. Similar to the 911 report, we should really dig into that and find out what the hell happened. What was it? When was it?
It was on January 27th, 1975.
1975.
Of a vote of 82 to 4. So.
Yeah, so that was real bipartisan, which it's too bad we don't have that today. But the point is that when you look at the government's attack and assault on one individual because of his thoughts and ideas, and then you look at the fact, when you look at all of the companies that banned Trump, they were all owned by BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, every one of them. So Shopify, companies that weren't even significant to his platform or where he was trying to go, but all of those companies banned him, and they're all owned by those companies, which have a direct tie into the CIA, direct tie into the FBI, and a direct tie into government. When you're managing assets at that level, you know, the government isn't sitting back going, I mean, a great example of that in the beginning was Michael Milken. You remember Michael Milken?
The bond, is he the bond guy?
Yeah, the bond guy. Yeah. He was creating companies that were blowing away the establishment, right? One of those was FedEx. That was a junk bond company that started. And was the government, not the government so much, but the people who lobbied the government were not happy about that. Michael Milken ended up in prison because Ivan Boesky got nailed and he turned over on Milken, but none of it was true. I mean, I met Michael Milken in Santa Monica years ago, and he was, you know, he's not, just not that guy. He's not going to be the guy doing something wrong. But when the government comes after you, you know, Trump's really the first person that's fighting it. I mean, most people just like roll over. I'm not going to do it. Well, how long? A year? Okay, I'll take the year and I'll go do it just to get out of this thing, because it's such a fucking. When they come after you, and I have been prosecuted, it is a fucking burden on your life, your family. Very few people survive it.
So okay, so I have questions.
Yeah.
So I guess the part about, you know, the people that came after Trump, that banned him, that took him, deplatformed him, and all that kind of stuff, they were owned by, you know, BlackRock and those guys. But so I guess my take would have been they are kind of all kind of, you know, thumb to the air, like what's there, they got the profit motive, right? And if it seems like the prevailing opinion, and you could blame the press on this a bit, if the prevailing public view is, oh man, it's all this disinformation and it's dangerous, if they think they're going to get more clicks by deplatforming somebody, I bet they will. And by the way, maybe more important than the profit motive for some of them is, let's be honest, they have a political agenda. Everybody's got an opinion, and certainly in the big tech world, you know, California, San Francisco Bay Area, like this is not exactly a bastion of, you know, conservatism. I mean, the ambient, you know, political leaning there is like pretty far to the left. So if I do the Occam's razor explanation, the reason like that they all, you know, pretty much in unison were happy to deplatform Trump is because they didn't like him to begin with. I guess I'm still suspect of the BlackRock. I guess I'm a suspect of that the passive owners of these companies had their thumb on the scale. I don't think they needed to have their thumb on their scale, because, you know, Zuckerberg and the people running all those places would have been happy to just like, okay, I got an excuse to take them off my platform. See you later. You're gone.
Right.
So
it's the common zeitgeist, I think, controls it, like what you're saying. I do agree with that.
So I'm suspect of the thumb on the scale by BlackRock. And then what's the like the CIA connection back to BlackRock or any of those guys?
Well, they're the feeder. They're the feeder for these companies. I mean, they go through the DARPA channel, and then they're all looked at. You're looked at by all the agencies, NSA, FBI. They all look at it, and they determine whether the technology has any viability long term, and then that's what determines how they move forward with you. But it is a little unusual that the same companies that were owned by these companies are like Shopify said, no, Trump, you can't. I mean, it's what we use for our technology, for any of our shopping technologies online, for our online stores. What significance does that have? Just like, why are they saying, hey, Donald Trump, you can't sell your hats on, or whatever the fuck they were selling?
Yeah, they didn't like him.
Yeah, it's peculiar.
Yeah, maybe.
It might be a coincidence. It might not be a coincidence.
I certainly can't prove it.
But another thing, hey, James, see if you can find this. When in the beginning of Trump's presidency, he created an agency that was bipartisan for voting. It was the voters. I can't remember. You got to look it up.
I'll try.
Yeah. Anyway, so this agency that he created after he was in office. So everybody, I've gotten these discussions with people. Well, he never did anything to try and decide whether there was really a voting issue. Well, he did. He created an agency that was bipartisan inside the government to go in and audit primarily trouble. I think we talked about this a little bit on the last episode, but to go in there and audit. But it's an interesting thing when you look at the whole picture. He created this agency to go in and decide whether the voting was viable, whether there was no hanky-panky shit going on, shady shit going on.
Presidential Advisory Commission on Election Integrity. That's the one,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
Executive Order 13799.
Yeah, that's it. He found that agency. He started that agency. And you want to know something? Not a single state would allow that auditing group to go in and look at their process.
Why is that?
I don't know.
We don't know.
Tell me, read about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting read. But they were not allowed in any circumstance in the states. They were Michigan, Arizona. They were going after the usual suspects. So
this was like real-time auditing, or was this pre or post?
No,
It
it's
was
after.
after.
Yeah, it was after. They wanted to see how they counted votes, what the process was, what they were using, what was working, what wasn't working. Was there fraud? What kind of fraud was involved? He kind of had this suspicion about it right out of the get-go. And I got to believe that was a huge surprise for the Democratic Party. I was invited to a David Tate, who is who is the
Andrew Tate, you're thinking, right?
No, David Tate. He is the biographer for who's the Virgin guy?
Branson.
Branson.
Yeah,
he's Richard Branson's biographer. He also was involved in Virgin Airlines with him. I was invited to a party years ago. They had done a Barack Obama book, a beautiful book. And Joanne Michaels had invited me to this whole thing. She was a reporter, worked at the New York Times. Anyway, she invited me to this thing. My ex-wife and I went down. And it was interesting. It was an interesting thing because they had taken pictures. This was an after party where this guy had given this presentation, was the photographer. I can't remember his name, but David Tate helped him write the book, who was Branson's, and who's loves Barack Obama. Branson loves Barack Obama. Anyway, but they had pictures of the New York Times room. He had pictures of it when they found out that Trump had won the election. You should see. People were crying. He had pictures of them crying, breaking down. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I've got a picture of it, so if I can get it, I'll post it somewhere.
Wailing and gnashing of teeth.
What's that?
I said it was wailing and gnashing of.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. I'm not advocating Trump today. I am sitting here. If this was going on with Barack Obama, I would have a problem with it. When you have that many forces, so we'll go back to this whole thing. Two impeachments driven by Democrats. 4 indictments driven by Democrats. Do you reach a point where you go, and like I said, I have been prosecuted. So when it's a brutal process, they win. The whole
and a fifth coming. I think Georgia's going to be televised, so that'll be the 5th.
Yeah.
That's the 4th. Isn't that the 4th?
Or maybe, I don't. I don't
Yeah,
know.
there's
I thought he
something-
was already at 4, but
There's something a little unhinged about that whole thing.
I think
But-
it's the Georgia thing when it's televised that's new news, but I think that's all in reference to the fourth indictment about the finding of
Okay.
11,780 votes.
okay.
Yeah, that bothers me. The fact that we're politicizing it. I mean, this should not be the way, regardless of what you think about. I mean, I think one way to look at it is that, you know, when you're calling up the governor of a state that you lost and telling him to find votes, I mean, come on, that doesn't look good. That doesn't sound good. It seems untoward. Is it illegal? Well,
You think he's the
I
first
mean-
guy to do that? You think?
I mean, like out of context, when he's like, "Hey, I don't believe it." I mean, I can't. You know, these guys have their internal polling and stuff, and maybe it's just maybe he legitimately thinks like this literally can't be that I lost this state. You know, you go find the votes. Like, out of context, like I don't know, is that criminal? Well, it's certainly unbecoming, but it doesn't. It feels like we're going through a lot of legal gymnastics to try to find him guilty of doing something illegal, even if a lot of people just think he's behaving in a way that is unpresidential. And I just wish we weren't, you know, the idea that this process is politically motivated. It's like, it's kind of hard to deny that it is pretty politically motivated, which is just, it kind of polarizes the outcome all that much further. He was enough of a polarizing figure already. And to your point, in a lot of cases, it's just increasing his popularity. So it's like, you know, he's gone to the big house or the White House, but nothing in between. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
You want to talk about the debate? You want to move on to other politicians or what?
Sure. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I just thought it was interesting. Just the way the different candidates kind of presented themselves. It's interesting that Trump didn't participate, which tough to blame him, right? I mean, like people don't know where he stands on things. So I kind of just objectively, I mean, I think he got some grief from some folks for like, oh, why isn't he debating? But why would he? Everybody knows where he stands on stuff, and like let these other people just sort it out amongst themselves. And then who knows? Maybe he'll debate like the last 2 or 3 or 4 left standing. But yeah, even that. But I don't know. I just thought it was interesting how different candidates positioned themselves, especially with respect to, you know, where Trump stands on things. I don't know. I found that a lot of Trump supporters, I've asked some people that are Trump supporters, like, okay, if you had to just move past it, right? Like, who else would you like? And in some cases, I can't get a straight answer to that question. It's like Trump or bust. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
In my opinion on that, just to talk about the debate, I think it was good not to have Trump there because he sucks all the oxygen out of the room. Right. Yeah. And so we got to see who, and, you know, the 3 people that DeSantis, that Vivek and Nikki
Haley,
governor from North Carolina. I think those 3 probably were the most. Now, Mike Pence, can someone just tell him to go home?
He didn't get the memo.
And these other 2 governors, Burgum, and then the last one, the guy from Arkansas, like I literally had not heard of him. And I live in New Hampshire. So, you know, we get a little bit of attention in the presidential primary process.
Yes.
And that guy, I'm like, who are you? I'm sorry, what? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
no, Mike Pence, I don't know. I just recently was looking at a video of Mike Pence in the room with Donald Trump, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer talking about the border.
Yeah.
How Trump's going to shut down the government. He's like, I'll take that. I'll own that. That'll be mine. No, not you. And when you look at Mike Pence, he looks like he's either having a bowel movement or he's afraid to death of what's going on in that room. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that video. Yeah, Penn. I'm not the big Pence fan. I think he's just trying to like position to be like the grown up. Like, hey, I've already I've been in the White House. I'm the most experienced. I mean, he ran a state. He was a governor. I mean, he's experienced. But I don't.
It'd be great to see him and Trump at it, though. Like if it did end up that way.
That would
like
be
debating.
kind of funny.
Yeah.
Well, like
I don't think it will. I don't think Pence is gonna. I don't think he's
No.
gonna get any traction. I think he's. Gonna,
I don't think
he's gonna
so.
be out pretty quick. I thought it was interesting how everybody. There was a lot of people swinging at Vivek. He was for being this out of the blue candidate. He certainly got a lot of attention, which probably is good for him.
Yeah, he's like number 3 right now, right? Or
Yeah,
number
I think
3.
so.
Yeah.
And he's
who-
I think Vivek Ramaswamy.
Oh yeah. I think he's 2 solid.
Wow. Yeah.
We'll look up some.
Has he surpassed DeSantis yet?
No, I think maybe DeSantis is 2 and he's 3.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, it depends.
I'm just guessing.
Why can't he
I
get
think no.
traction?
I think right now. So if you look at the Real Clear Politics aggregate thing, which is a good barometer. So Ramaswamy has come up into 3rd. So he's still behind DeSantis, but DeSantis is trending steadily down. I mean, he peaked. He was up around 30% for, like the November, December through kind of March timeframe. And since then, he's just been on a steady decline from 30-ish% down to 13 and a half. So he's lost half his support.
Wow.
Trump's just flat around 50%. It's like, it's not obvious how any of these people can beat him.
And I just heard the stats in Iowa are 50% Trump, I think 25% voting the other way. But that's all I've heard so far. But 50% of Iowans claim they're for Trump.
Yeah.
Probably not a big surprise.
Yeah, it's Tim Scott is looking like he's okay. And in Iowa, I'm seeing like Trump, DeSantis, then Tim Scott, then Ron.
Yeah, they like Tim Scott out here. I've heard that name a lot. I didn't really listen to him in the debates.
That's okay. He just, I don't know. It didn't seem like he like made much progress or gained much ground. I don't know. You guys, what do you think of Vivek? I mean, do you guys have an opinion about this?
I like him a lot. I mean, I think at this point in time, the thing that we need is someone who is not, if to his point on stage, when he pointed to everyone, he stood there and stretched his arms out and said, here is the establishment. Here are the donor class.
Yeah.
And then Chris Christie, oh yeah, we're going to vote for Chris Christie. I don't think so. Gastric bypass that never worked. That's the first one. But anyway, a friend of mine was at a buffet with him one time. It was a fight for your life. That matters, but if we're going to have healthy people involved in not that Trump, he loves fast food, but who else I really like a lot is Robert Kennedy Jr.
I know, I like him too. Nate and I talked about him. I mean, he's better than Oprah's spiritual advisor. What's her name? She's the other. It's just 3, right? Last I heard, it was Biden, Oprah's spiritual advisor, and RFK. I think they only had 3.
What's that?
Williamson? Is it Williamson? Is that it? Yeah, I'm only seeing. I think
yeah, it's crazy. Well, that was the bio. It said Oprah's spiritual advisor. I don't know what else.
Is that like the only thing on her resume?
I mean, I didn't see anything else pop up. I mean, you could probably dig deeper. I didn't really look it up.
Before it's Williamson. Yeah. What's her first name?
Marianne Deborah Williamson.
Marianne Deborah Williamson.
52.
She was born in 1952. Is that
I'm definitely voting for her.
She looks young. I mean, for somebody born in, not that, I'm not.
She's 71.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess she looks young for 71.
I was going to say, that's young for.
I mean, up there next to Trump and Biden, it's like, holy crap, could we get somebody that's under 75 for the love of humanity?
Who's the senator that keeps blanking out? What's that? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Running for president or just a random?
No, they asked him if he was going to run again for office, and he had another spiral.
Who? I don't know. Who are you talking about? Republican? Democrat?
Yeah, Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell. Yeah, he's been just spacing out. Yeah.
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 I have no use for that guy.
He obviously doesn't have the Adderall trip that Joe Biden does. Because he's just. I mean, the reality of it is we've got a geriatric center we're running.
Yeah, it seems like elder abuse, and I'm not joking. Like to push these people into that, like he's.
And I don't want to be ageist, right, and say that we can't have, it's got to be people of a certain age. But like, I'm sorry, I think I have long-term concerns about the trajectory of our country. And I don't know, it's just hard for me to understand how somebody who maybe only has 10 years left on this earth is going to take the long view, right? I mean, somebody that's at least going to be around.
But Vivek, on the other hand, does he seem too greenhorn? Does he seem?
Yeah, I mean, 38. Yeah. That's a little naive. I mean, I guess I feel like no one younger than me should be president. And yeah,
how old was JFK? He was pretty young, right?
That's a good question. I think he was one of the youngest, but he was not 38.
I think
no.
James is looking it up.
Yeah, I thought he was the youngest president elected at the time.
I think you're right. But, yeah, I think you're right. He was 46 when he died. So yeah, I mean, he must have been 43 when he was elected. Yeah.
So the thing is about JFK. Jude, did you see Oppenheimer?
I did. Yeah.
Oh, don't spoil it. Don't spoil it.
No,
I'm not going to see it.
Yeah, but beautiful film.
Don't tell me how it ends.
No, we won't. So one of the things in that movie that was really interesting was the whole JFK thing. Did they mention him?
Yeah.
Where he had voted for Oppenheimer, not against him. Well, he had voted to not nominate the nuclear commission guy. I can't think of his name right now. We talked about it in the last podcast, but and JFK, there were 3 votes. One of them was JFK. And the guy says, and it's really interesting. Christopher Nolan did some interesting things in that movie. But the thing that he did was he said, this senator out of Massachusetts, nobody knows who he is. He voted against your nomination. There was only 3 votes. So he didn't get the votes he needed for the nomination. But he was Oppenheimer's nemesis. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because Kennedy was exactly the opposite of what they thought he was, which is interesting, right? He was anti-war. He was anti-secret society, which he gave a huge speech. And when he was talking about secret societies, he was talking about the FBI, the CIA, NSA, whatever was available at that time. And God knows he had his bouts with J. Edgar Hoover, who liked to dress and drag, which we know now today. Not that there's anything wrong with that. And he was a gangster. There's no doubt Hoover was a gangster. But Kennedy, 6 months into his presidency, walked into a staff meeting per Oliver Stone on his recent bio release on that, which didn't get any traction. Great. If you want to watch something, that's a great movie. He walked in and said, I am not sure that I'm running anything in this town right now. And he was, that became a realization for him. And what they don't mention is that he was almost killed in Tampa and Chicago. There were 2 other assassination attempts until they brought him to Dallas, Texas, and said, hey, why don't you, just to be closer with the people, drive in a convertible? I mean, after 2 assassination attempts. And I don't know if you know the story. There was a black Secret Service agent who Kennedy had put on his staff. He had found him. He was at the Treasury or something, and he ended up putting him on his detail, Secret Service detail, who was trying to stop them from doing that. Mm-hmm. He later went to jail for money laundering or something related, because that's what the Secret Service does. They're in charge of our currency as well as the presidency. And he ended up in jail and died there. So, why am I talking about this? Because I think anyone that goes against and disrupts that system, that is the system that runs our government. It's not the president.
Bureaucracy.
Yeah, we are run by, everybody says this, the president really, well, there's probably some truth to that. The president doesn't. And when they do come in and try and run things like Kennedy did, well, that's not a good idea.
And RFK has come right out and pretty much said all these things.
Yeah, and that's,
like some people don't like it. Some
Yeah,
well, nobody wants to hear the government is organized crime. I mean, we don't want to hear that. When you talk about the Ukraine and Russia, I think that, well, that's an interesting thing, Nate. Let's get your thoughts on this one. What's your thoughts on the Ukraine? What do you think about that?
oh gosh, it's so I think it's
At a
really,
macro level, we don't have to dig into
yeah. I
everything.
mean, at a macro level, I think it is really too bad that we aren't a little bit more pragmatic about the consequences of our actions. And I think it's far too easy for people to just say, "Oh, Putin's a madman." He's not a madman. I think he's a rational actor.
Me too.
Now, I happen to think he's a thug, and he's a tyrant, and I think he's a danger to world peace. But he's not irrational. And the fact that when NATO was established, or sorry, when the Berlin Wall came down and the Soviet Union collapsed, we basically told, I think it was George H.W. Bush, not 1 inch of NATO expansion, and that, or not 1 inch eastward, right, closer to Russia, that we have this like buffer zone, and that didn't happen. Now, the flip side is like people should be allowed to join NATO if they want to join NATO. Like, okay, but you got to recognize that as we brought NATO to his doorstep, he would probably perceive that as a threat. Now, does that give him the right to go invade his neighbor? No. So now I think we're just in a tough situation where I know a lot of people will just say like, we shouldn't be involved at all. We shouldn't be helping. We need to just be completely out of it. I'm really not in that camp because I think he is a thug and I think he is a threat. And if we just send the message that, yeah, it's okay to just invade your neighbor and we're just going to stand by and say, well, that's too bad, I think that makes the world more dangerous. But I think it's also dangerous to just assume that, to discredit him as like a madman and to not be pragmatic about having an exit ramp, right? I mean, if there's no possibility of compromise or any of that, then it feels like escalation is the only path. And certainly if we paint him into enough of a corner to where we're threatening, he already says we're a threat to the existence of Russia, right? If he actually perceives that we are enough of a threat to Russia, what's he going to do? Like, let's not provoke him to launch World War III. So yeah, I don't know. It's just, we're in a bad situation. I'm definitely not in the like, just walk away and let him do whatever he wants camp, but just endless war. Just
to what end? I mean, I like find the U.S. support, but like to what end? Like, what do we keep paying them to fight this?
What I believe is it's an orchestrated attempt on the U.S. since the 1950s to create Russia as this gigantic. First of all, Russian economy is as big as Italy's. Okay, and most of it's organized crime, right?
Yeah.
They're an organized crime state. There's no question about it. So, right, he runs the country like a mob boss. There's no question about that. But then has he been provoked? Totally been provoked by the U.S.
Yeah.
He wanted to join NATO in 1992 to get away from China. And he thought that was the safest thing for him to do for his country. I think it was 1992. I might be wrong about that, but he wanted to join NATO at some point, and they kiboshed that. And you're right; it was George Bush who created the deal that said, "Hey, we will not butt up against Soviet." Right. You could set up too, James. When that was?
Yeah, I think it was 1991.
1991. Okay, so in 1991, that's when he had made an attempt to join NATO. The problem was that we need a boogeyman, and Russia's been the boogeyman since World War II, right into the Cold War.
Actually, excuse me. I think it's actually 1954, or maybe it happened twice. But
It had to have happened twice then. Yeah, 1954 would have been the first attempt. That would have been Vladimir Putin. That would have been Brezhnev or one of the other, Soviet leaders. But the point is that I'm not in that. I'm with you on this. I don't think he's a madman. I think he's pretty fucking smart. He's a very volatile government that's all run by these thugs. And I think that he was threatened. I always say this: suppose we were to start taking, if China came in and said, you know what, Mexico and Canada, we're gonna put missile deployments
right.
borders.
Yeah, that wouldn't fly.
What would happen? Bombings at noon. We'd be bombing the shit out of our northern and southern border.
We got to bring the pro-Putin guy on. That connection I have. He's in the Russian military.
Oh my gosh.
He would be.
I can't.
He started talking to
him. I can't be on a podcast with him.
He was. He's the first pro-Putin guy I ever met.
Yeah, you go alternate. Have him next time. Have him next time. Yeah.
Yeah. No. And the other thing is, in that same vein, what he does is ain't worse than what we do. I'm just trying to put it in the best light, because we've killed over 1 million Muslims during between the Arab summer, the romanticism of that bullshit, and just the whole unstabling of the Middle East. We just went in there and fucking created this instability that we're still feeling the ramifications from. I mean, somehow we're not being bothered by terrorists, but we don't even know if that's true, because, they're very patient and they'll take their time and then they'll do what they got to do to us. I mean,
the instability was there. We just stirred the pot.
Maybe not. I mean, Saddam Hussein had everything intact there. I hate to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of have a little bit of a overdone affection for democracy, and a little bit of we're a little delusional about democracy being the answer to all problems. I mean, I think it's a good system. It has worked well in the Western world. We've thrived, we've prospered, having democracy and the rule of law, and we've certainly economically thrived. But you just can't force it on people at the point of the gun. I mean, I think that was the big lesson of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars: is you don't come in there with with the military and kill everybody that's in charge and say, okay, now everyone that survived, go vote, and that's the path to a healthy functioning society. See you later.
Western
Western
society.
Yeah. Right. Then you leave, and then the Taliban takes over the following week, and it's like, is that a good investment of 2 decades? I'm not so sure it was.
I think, first of all, that entire region's so tribal. I don't even know. We didn't have that, 250 years ago here in the United States. We didn't have a tribal society. It was community driven, and we obviously had a revolution that was successful. And it's another interesting thing too about
it's tribal now, though.
Oh yeah, we are 100% tribal, which shows you why it doesn't work. But I was discussing the whole thing with a friend of mine who extremely socialist guy, nice guy, very nice guy, respect his opinions. But he was saying how a bunch of powdered haired old white men wrote the Constitution. I'm like, no, exactly. If you take Ben Franklin, who was 70 years old at the time, the average age of the guy who wrote the Constitution was 27 or 28 years old.
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
We got 27, 28-year-olds who can't write a sentence, let alone
a Constitution that's going to stand up for, 240 years and counting.
Yeah. And no distractions. They didn't have Apple iPhone. They could think, right? We don't have thinkers anymore, who delved into the darkest aspects of their minds to come up with this thing called a republic, not a democracy. Democracies are unsafe. We're a republic. That's why we have the electoral college. And so that one single idea becomes a primary idea inside our country.
We do vote. I mean, we're a democratic republic, right? We do vote, right?
Yes,
but it's
we
not,
do vote, and we used to do them really well. But I think that is the these were young guys. Which brings us back to age and presidency.
right?
I'm 60 now. I want some young guys in there with some new ideas, not the same old bullshit. It hasn't worked. I mean, here we are today. We could say, oh yeah, it has, but we've really fucked up a lot of shit out there. We pissed off a lot of people. So when I hear Vivek and his ideas, I mean, yeah, he might be a little green. He's not going to be able to do everything he's saying. There's going to be people that are going to stop him. They'll probably kill him too, because his ideas really are against the elite. They're against the status quo. But I think the majority of people, that's what they want right now in government. I might be wrong about that, but I don't think so.
I think that, the interesting thing with him is if I just try to step back and objectively like see how they're positioning, like Vivek sounds like Trump. Like if you not like necessarily the way he speaks or what he looks like or any of that stuff, but just policy wise and message wise, he's basically advocating for almost everything that Trump is advocating for. It feels like he's positioning as either, maybe cynically, maybe he's just positioning to be like Trump's VP pick or whatever. But it seems like his thought is like, okay, if the base finally turns on him, or if he does get, the legal attacks actually do take hold, and it just becomes clear. Or I mean, the guy's 77 years old. Like he could have a health issue just out of natural. Like the guy's old. It feels like Vivek is positioning himself to pick up the Trump base, the relatively, I don't really love the word populist, but that wing of the party. It feels like that's where Vivek is aiming his sights, right? And kind of DeSantis too. I mean, DeSantis is pretty much similar positioning wise, trying to. He sounds a lot like he advocates for a lot of the things.
But is the base willing to accept either?
Not really. I mean, clearly for the most part, that part of the party is remaining pretty loyal to Trump. So
right.
I don't see how Vivek or DeSantis really can overtake Trump and beat him at his own game unless something really goes sideways for Trump, right?
Right.
So the other candidates, right, like particularly Nikki Haley, I mean, like it was interesting. Like they all came out, DeSantis, man, what a grumpy sounding guy. I mean, that guy, it's like his strategy was just like yell at everybody. But everybody came out swinging at Biden, and when Nikki Haley got up there, she took on the Republicans, right? Her opening salvo was like, hey, you're complaining about this out of control spending. Well, fiscal profligacy appears to be a bipartisan issue. Like the Republicans are just as out of control. So, she's clearly going after a different constituency, if you will. And, I think it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
DeSantis is big mistake, and people know this, is that he aligned himself with the Bushes, and they're his primary funding source. And it's not out there in the public, but if you're in the fundraising world, you would know that. And
right, yeah. The what is it? The Americans for Prosperity.
Yes,
I think that's the Koch brothers PAC. I think.
Right.
The Koch brothers have always liked the Bushes. And they're running all kinds of ads. And honestly, like, there's some truth. Like the big message that they're sending is the only way Biden gets reelected is if he's up against Trump. And I think they are probably right about that. I mean,
it's a sad state of affairs if that's
yeah. I mean,
I was shocked to even see that Biden was like running again. I thought that was a joke. It's crazy. Like
no joke, man. It's no joke.
I mean, there is no question. Okay, I don't care. I have actually talked. This is what blows my mind. I have some, we all do. We have really smart friends that and acquaintances that are smart people, right? You ask them, do you think there's anything going on with Joe Biden? You think he's got his cognitive decline is there, or no, he's always been like that. What?
Really?
Did they ever do the remember when they were trying to do the competency test on Trump? Did they do that on Biden or no?
Yeah, he wouldn't take it. He wouldn't take the test.
And Trump didn't take it either, right? Or did he take it?
He took the test.
Oh, okay.
Can't we tell? I mean, can't the voters? Isn't it obvious? Like,
why?
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm not that big of a fan of some competency test or whatever.
No,
make him stand up on a debate stage and
that's exactly right.
Complete a sentence or deliver a speech or give a press conference. Like, you can tell. Like,
Just look at the guy.
it's pretty clear there's some cognitive decline.
Yeah, no, but I mean, when you fall that many times, that's not coincidence. We haven't had Gerald Ford, who was really just clumsy. I mean, he fell down the stairs of Air Force One. But when you have that many incidences and unable to speak and called, Pete Buttigieg butt juice. Did you hear that, Pete? But
No.
like, what was it? Just like, what? When you are, I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, it is really pretty obvious. Like I said, they have him on an Adderall trip. They probably can Kabul. They got him more wired up than Hitler was. Just they have better stuff today that can keep him semi-stable. But you got to be fucking kidding me. This guy is, and he's in charge. Well, he's not in charge of anything. I don't know who's really running it. They, say Obama's running it. Who knows? But it's a little frightening that we would elect that type of impairment. And how is that possible?
I don't know. But if we're stuck with Trump and Biden, then we've guaranteed an octogenarian president. I mean, I wish they would both step aside.
And in a way, I do too. I do. I do, though, want to see our government it's time to chapter 11. We need to shake it. We need to reboot our government and get better people into our government. I just think that's an obvious. If people can't see that, if they're happy with what's going on, then there's something wrong with those people. Let's not have them vote anymore. But I'm not married to any single candidate at this point. I do like Robert Kennedy. I like his stances on more things than I dislike. And I like Vivek. I like him. But boy, if you mention Robert Kennedy to a hardcore Democrat, it's like, whoa, be ready to get, it's almost as bad as Donald Trump. I'm like, yowzer, what did I just say that upsetted you? It's people have a real problem with him. And he's been a champion for so many good things. I mean, he's been a champion for so many good things. I just don't get it. Yeah. We can't get into vaccines or anything because
no.
Well, they'll throw us. So we've been thrown off YouTube now twice because of it. But there is the last thing I think we could talk about is just the fact that there's a new variant, and they're actually talking about bringing back masks and boosting up the vaccine thing. I mean, that is a frightening thought that we're going to go back to that whole thing, because just at certain levels, forget about vaccines and all that, just as at a societal level, the effects that had on businesses, and if we're still feeling the ramifications from that. I mean, we've got a lot of businesses hanging out for their dear life because the shutdowns were so severe. They must have
cut back on the advertising budget, though, because I haven't really seen commercials and public service announcements. And
our friend Alex Jones, December 12th, he came out. He had been supposedly, Alex Jones, just, you can say what you want, but boy, has he been right a lot. I don't know. I mean, he's been right more than he's been wrong. Oh, the Sandy Hook thing, blah, blah. Get it. It's a touchy subject.
Did you see one of his guys got 17 years, the Proud Boy guy, yesterday, I think, from January 6th? Yeah. And he was like a correspondent, I think, with Alex Jones. I forgot his name.
There as a news reporter reporting it.
I don't know. I didn't really pay attention. I just saw it yesterday. You know, I'm not a fan of the Proud Boys, so I wasn't weeping about it. But interesting. Like,
I don't know.
That's a lot of time.
We didn't even cover aliens, and we went out there.
Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to do this again sometime.
An alien. We're gonna have to do a second podcast.
So much more to cover.
Oh God, we just hit the tip of the iceberg tonight.
Yeah,
or today. But anything with that said, I think we're going to sign off,
wrap it up. Yeah,
wrap it up, and we will get back to it soon. Nate,
yeah,
excellent. You're an excellent. You've covered all the, including lasers, which is your.
I love it.
Traffic, and
yeah, sure.
Everything else in between. So excellent.
Yeah, it's been fun, guys.
And you look smashing.
Thank you, sir.
I don't know if I can take all this military industrial stuff.
Thing, right?
Oh, I did have that earlier, but it was like too much to put it in my mouth for 2 hours.
That's what shit. No,
James said it was nice to meet both you guys.
Oh, yes. Pleasure. Thank you, James, for helping
out.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thanks for helping us out today. And with that said, go into the night, be fearless, because God knows you got to be that, if anything, But with that said, sign off. See you soon.